Yust Part 1. Mr. Chen, these surveillance devices are in direct violation of our community guidelines, Patricia Kellerman announced, slapping a bright orange compliance notice against my front door. You have 48 hours to remove them, or we'll begin daily fines of $500. I pulled out my phone and started recording. Actually, Patricia, every one of these cameras is positioned on my property and complies with state privacy laws. I designed the network architecture myself. The smugness drained from her face as she realized I wasn't just another intimidated homeowner. Kevin Russo, the maintenance supervisor standing behind her, shifted uncomfortably and avoided eye contact. If you've ever felt that surge of power when standing up to bullies, hit subscribe now. This showdown is about to become a masterclass in fighting back. I'm David Chen, and I've spent the last 15 years designing cybersecurity systems for Fortune 500 companies, I said, keeping my voice level. These cameras aren't just recording, they're integrated into a cloud-based security network with real-time monitoring and automatic backup protocols. Patricia's jaw tightened. The HOA board has determined The HOA board doesn't override federal and state law, I interrupted. But here's what you should understand about why these cameras aren't going anywhere. Through the living room window, I could see my 71-year-old mother Eleanor watching nervously from her wheelchair. 6 months ago, she suffered a stroke that left her partially paralyzed on her right side. The doctor said she'd made remarkable progress, but she still needed constant monitoring for potential medical emergencies. My mother lives with me now, I explained, gesturing toward the window where Eleanor sat. She's a stroke survivor who requires medical supervision. These cameras aren't just security, they're her lifeline when I'm at work. The ring system alerts me instantly if she falls, has another stroke, or needs help. Patricia glanced at Eleanor, then back at me with cold indifference. Medical conditions don't exempt residents from community standards. Actually, they do under the Fair Housing Act, but we're not there yet, I replied. What you should know is that our neighborhood has had 3 break-ins targeting elderly residents in the past year. Mrs. Patterson down the street, Mr. Valdez on Oak Lane, and the Hendersons on Maple Drive. All seniors living alone, all targeted because someone knew their routines. Kevin cleared his throat. Patricia, maybe we should... The board's decision is final, she snapped, cutting him off. Mr. Chen, you seem to think your technical background gives you special privileges. But HOA covenants apply to everyone equally. I almost laughed at that. Equally? Is that why the Johnson security cameras have been up for 2 years without a single violation notice? Or why the Smiths got a friendly warning for their fence? Height while Mrs. Garcia got fined immediately for the same issue? Drop a like if you've ever wanted to stand up to unreasonable rules like this, and subscribe to see how this strategy plays out. Patricia's face flushed red. Those situations are completely different. Different how? Different because they donate to board members' campaigns? Different because they attend your fundraising dinners? You have 48 hours, Mr. Chen. After that, the fines begin, and we'll explore other enforcement options. Her voice carried a threat that made my blood run cold. Other enforcement options? Kevin looked like he wanted to disappear. Patricia smiled coldly. The HOA has broad authority to ensure compliance. We can pursue legal action, place liens on non-compliant properties, or conduct mandatory inspections to verify violations have been corrected. Mandatory inspections of my home? If necessary, yes. The covenants grant us access for compliance verification. I felt something shift inside me, a protective instinct that had nothing to do with property rights and everything to do with the vulnerable woman watching from the window. My mother had already lost so much to her stroke, her independence, her confidence, her sense of security. I'd installed these cameras so she could feel safe again, so she could call for help if she needed it, so I could check on her throughout the day. Patricia Kellerman had just declared war on my family's peace of mind. You know what, Patricia? You've made a serious miscalculation here, I said quietly. These cameras aren't just recording the outside of my house. They're integrated into a comprehensive security system that monitors everything, and I mean everything, that happens on this property. The confidence flickered in her eyes for just a moment. Where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments because Patricia Kellerman has no idea what she's just started. Part 2. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop, diving deep into Patricia's enforcement history. What I found made my stomach turn. Over the past 18 months, she'd issued 47 violation notices, and the pattern was impossible to ignore. Every single fine over $200 had been issued to working-class families. Every gentle warning had gone to residents in the expensive lakefront section. The Johnson security cameras, never cited. The Martinez family's identical system, fined immediately. The country club members who hosted loud pool parties, friendly reminders about noise ordinances. The night shift nurse whose Honda Civic was parked in her own driveway, 17 citations for unsightly vehicle storage. "This is systematic targeting," I muttered, screenshotting everything. Mom wheeled herself into the kitchen around 10 p.m. "David, honey, you've been at that computer for hours. What are you looking at?" "Evidence, Mom. Patricia Kellerman has been running a protection racket, disguised as HOA enforcement." Eleanor frowned. "That's a serious accusation. Look at this." I turned the laptop toward her. "Mrs. Garcia on Elm Street, fined $300 because her fence was 6 inches too high. The Hendersons on Oak Lane have the exact same fence height, installed by the same contractor. Their violation notice? A friendly suggestion to consider minor adjustments when convenient. What's the difference between the families? Garcia works double shifts at the hospital to support her kids. Henderson is a corporate lawyer married to Patricia's tennis partner." Mom's expression hardened. "That's not coincidence?" "No, it's not. And tomorrow morning, I'm going to find out just how deep this goes." The next morning, I walked into Sunrise Cafe on Main Street with a manila folder full of printouts. I'd sent messages to 3 families the night before, asking if they'd meet me for coffee to discuss HOA concerns. All 3 had agreed immediately. Maria Santos arrived first, looking exhausted despite the early hour. She worked 2 jobs, morning shift at the bakery, evening shift cleaning offices, and had 3 kids under 10. "David, right? You're Eleanor's son?" She slid into the booth across from me. "I heard Patricia gave you trouble about your cameras." "That's putting it mildly. But I think your situation might be worse. Tell me about the sidewalk chalk incident." Maria's face darkened. "My kids were drawing hopscotch squares on our driveway. Our own driveway, mind you. Patricia drove by, took pictures, and 3 days later, I got a notice about defacing community surfaces with a $100 fine. Your driveway isn't a community surface. Try telling her that. When I disputed it, she said the chalk was visible from the street and created an unprofessional appearance." Maria shook her head. "David, I can't afford these fights. I'm barely keeping up with my mortgage as it is." Frank Mitchell joined us next, a 73-year-old Vietnam veteran with calloused hands and tired eyes. He'd received 3 violation notices in the past month. "It started with my flag," Frank said, stirring sugar into his coffee. "I fly a small American flag from my porch, have for 20 years. Suddenly it's a non-approved decoration violating these aesthetic standards. 20 years, and now it's a problem. The day after I spoke up at the board meeting about excessive fines hitting fixed-income residents." Frank's jaw tightened. "Coincidence, right?" The 3rd person surprised me. Sarah Chen, no relation despite the shared surname, was a pediatric nurse who worked night shifts at the children's hospital. "Patricia's been citing my car," Sarah explained. "I park in my own driveway after 12-hour shifts, and apparently that creates visual disturbance during daylight hours." "Wait, she's citing you for parking in your own driveway?" 17 times in 6 months, says healthcare workers. "Should use discreet parking solutions that don't advertise our irregular schedules to the community." I leaned back, processing the scope of Patricia's campaign. This isn't random enforcement. This is targeted harassment designed to force out residents she considers undesirable. Maria nodded grimly. "Working parents, elderly people on fixed incomes, anyone who can't afford to fight back or doesn't have the time for lengthy appeals. She's trying to social engineer the neighborhood," Frank added. "Price out the regular folks, make room for more tennis partners and country club friends." "The worst part," Sarah said, "is that I've seen identical violations in the lakefront section get friendly phone calls instead of fines. Mrs. Patterson told me Patricia personally called to let her know about a fence issue and gave her 3 months to address it when convenient. I spread my printouts across the table. This is bigger than individual harassment. Patricia's created a 2-tier enforcement system. One set of rules for wealthy residents, another for everyone else. The 3 of them studied the documents, their anger building as the pattern became undeniable. "So what do we do?" Maria asked. "None of us can afford lawyers." I smiled grimly. "We don't need lawyers. We need something much more powerful." "What's that?" "The truth. And the right platform to share it." Part 3. I was loading lumber into my truck at Henderson Hardware that evening when I heard footsteps approaching across the gravel parking lot. Kevin Russo emerged from behind a row of work vehicles, his hands shoved deep in his pockets, shoulders hunched like he was walking into a headwind. "David?" His voice cracked slightly. Could I talk to you for a minute?" I set down the 2x4 I was holding. Kevin looked like he hadn't slept in days, dark circles under his eyes, work shirt wrinkled, that nervous energy of someone carrying a secret too heavy to bear alone. "Sure, Kevin. What's on your mind?" He glanced around the parking lot, checking for witnesses, then leaned against his HOA maintenance truck. His hands were trembling as he pulled them from his pockets. "Look, what happened today with Patricia and the cameras?" He stopped, rubbing his face with both palms. "This job, it's all I got, you know. My daughter Emma's 17, junior year of high school. She wants to go to college, study veterinary medicine. Smart as hell, straight A's. But we need every penny I can scrape together." Kevin's voice caught, and he cleared his throat roughly. "Single dad income doesn't leave room for mistakes." I waited, sensing there was more coming. Kevin kept fidgeting with his truck keys, the metal jangling in the quiet evening air. "Patricia pays me decent wages, good benefits. Emma's got health insurance through the HOA plan." He looked up at me, and I could see the war happening behind his eyes. "But some of the stuff she's been asking me to do, lately ... like what?" Kevin's jaw worked silently for several seconds before he answered. "The compliance inspections aren't supposed to work the way she's running them. The covenants say we can inspect for violations, but only with 24 hours notice and the homeowner present. That's not how she's planning to handle mine." "No." Kevin's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "She's been talking about using the master keys for surprise compliance verification. Says people hide violations when they know inspections are coming." A chill ran down my spine. "Master keys to what?" "All the houses built in the last 15 years have HOA emergency access. Fire department requirement. They needed a way for first responders to get in if residents weren't home during emergencies." Kevin's shoulders sagged. "Patricia's been expanding the definition of emergency." He pulled out his phone, scrolled through something, then showed me a text message from Patricia sent 2 hours ago. "Compliance inspection, Chen residence tomorrow evening. Use discretion protocol. No advance notice required for safety violations." "Kevin, that's breaking and entering." "I know." The words came out like a confession. "I've been telling myself it's just property inspection, that the covenants give us authority, but..." He shook his head. "Your mom's in that house. She's vulnerable. Patricia doesn't care." Kevin leaned heavily against his truck, the weight of his moral conflict visible in every line of his body. His breathing was shallow, rapid, like he was fighting a panic attack. "There's other stuff, too. Mrs. Garcia's fence violation. Patricia had me measure it 3 times until I got a number she liked. The Martinez family security cameras. She made me photograph them from angles that made them look like they were pointing at neighbor windows, even though they weren't." "Why are you telling me this?" Kevin looked up at the darkening sky, then directly at me. "Because I got a daughter who's going to ask me someday what kind of man her father was. And I can't look Emma in the eye and tell her I helped some power-hungry woman terrorize a stroke survivor and her son." He straightened up, some resolve hardening in his expression. "Patricia's planning something for tomorrow night. She called it definitive compliance verification and said the cameras needed to be permanently resolved one way or another." "What does that mean?" "I don't know exactly, but she's got me scheduled for evening overtime, and she specifically asked about your work schedule." Kevin's hands clenched into fists. "David, I think she's planning to enter your house when you're not home. The parking lot felt suddenly cold despite the warm evening. With my mother there alone, she doesn't see Eleanor as a person, Kevin said bitterly. She sees her as a compliance obstacle that needs to be managed. Kevin climbed into his truck, then rolled down the window. I can't lose this job, David. Emma's college applications are due in 3 months, and I've got $17,000 saved toward her first year. But I also can't be part of whatever Patricia's planning. What are you going to do? Kevin started the engine, his face a mask of conflicted determination. I'm going to pray you're smarter than she is. As his truck pulled away, I stood in the empty parking lot holding lumber I'd bought to reinforce my mother's wheelchair ramp. Now, I wondered if I'd need it to barricade our doors instead. Patricia Kellerman had just crossed a line from harassment into criminal territory. What she didn't know was that every entry point to my house was monitored by cameras that automatically uploaded to cloud storage and sent real-time alerts to my brother Marcus, stationed 8,000 miles away in Germany. If Patricia wanted to play with surveillance systems, she'd picked the wrong cybersecurity expert to target. Part 4. The next morning, I was checking Mom's blood pressure when I heard car doors slamming in our driveway. Through the living room window, I watched Patricia march up our walkway with 2 other board members, Robert Hendricks and Susan Walsh, all carrying clipboards and cameras. David, they're back, Mom whispered, her grip tightening on my arm. It's okay, Mom. Stay inside while I handle this. I stepped onto the front porch as Patricia began aggressively photographing every camera angle, flash firing even in the bright morning sunlight. Robert was sketching something on his clipboard while Susan recorded video on her phone. Mr. Chen, your 48-hour compliance period expires at noon today, Patricia announced without looking up from her camera. We're here to document the current violation status for our enforcement file. You're documenting cameras that are legally installed on my private property. Alleged privacy concerns don't override community standards. Patricia moved closer to the Ring doorbell, taking macro shots of the mounting hardware. These devices create surveillance of common areas and neighbor properties, which violates Section 12.4 of our covenants. Show me exactly what common areas my cameras can see. Susan stepped forward with her tablet. This aerial view clearly shows your camera coverage extending beyond your property lines. I looked at the image, a satellite photo with red lines drawn arbitrarily across neighboring yards. This is completely fabricated. My cameras are positioned to cover only my driveway, front door, and backyard. Our technical analysis disagrees, Robert said smoothly. We've consulted with security experts who confirm your system poses privacy risks to the community. What security experts? Patricia smiled coldly. That's proprietary board information. What matters is that noon deadline. After that, we'll be implementing alternative enforcement methods. Meaning what, exactly? The board has broad discretionary authority to address non-compliance issues, Susan replied, including property inspections, violation documentation, and corrective action implementation. The clinical language sent ice through my veins. Corrective action implementation, physical removal of non-compliant installations if necessary. Patricia's camera flash fired again, this time directly at our front window where Mom sat watching. Community standards apply to everyone, Mr. Chen. No exceptions for alleged medical situations. Inside the house, I heard a sharp gasp, followed by the sound of Mom's wheelchair moving quickly away from the window. You just photographed my elderly mother through her own window. I documented a potential secondary privacy violation, Patricia corrected. Residents using windows to surveil board activities could constitute harassment of HOA officials. My hands clenched into fists. She's sitting in her own living room, in a position to monitor and potentially interfere with legitimate board business. Patricia lowered her camera and stared at me with undisguised hostility. Mr. Chen, you seem to think your family situation grants you special privileges. It doesn't. From inside, I heard Mom's voice, high and distressed. David, I can't breathe right. I spun toward the door, but Patricia stepped sideways to block my path. We're not finished here. My mother needs help. Your compliance status needs resolution. I pushed past her and rushed inside to find Mom hyperventilating in her wheelchair, one hand pressed to her chest, the other gripping the armrest so tightly her knuckles were white. "Mom, look at me. Breathe slowly, in through your nose." I knelt beside her wheelchair, checking her pulse with one hand, while reaching for her emergency medications with the other. "Count with me. In for 4, hold for 4, out for 4. Her pulse was racing, 160 beats per minute and irregular. Post-stroke anxiety attacks were dangerous. They could trigger another cardiac event. "David!" They were taking pictures. Through the window. Mom's words came in gasps between rapid breaths. "I know, Mom. I'm going to make this stop." I helped her take 2 of her anti-anxiety pills and continued coaching her breathing. Through the open front door, I could hear Patricia's voice. "Compliance issues create unnecessary stress for everyone involved, Mr. Chen. Simple adherence to community standards would eliminate these unfortunate incidents." The casual cruelty in her tone, standing outside our home while my stroke survivor mother struggled to breathe because of their harassment, crystallized something cold and determined inside me. "David," Mom whispered as her breathing finally began to slow, "I'm scared. What if they come back when you're not here?" I looked into her frightened eyes and made a promise I intended to keep. "They won't hurt you, Mom. I'm going to end this." But as I helped Mom back to her bedroom for rest, I could still hear Patricia outside, instructing Robert and Susan about documentation protocols for escalated enforcement scenarios. Kevin's warning echoed in my mind: definitive compliance verification. Patricia wasn't planning to wait much longer. That evening, I kissed Mom goodnight and drove to my office, ostensibly to finish a client security audit. What I was really doing was positioning myself away from the house while ensuring every camera system was recording at maximum resolution. If Patricia wanted to escalate this conflict, I'd give her all the documentation she could handle. Word count, 700 part 5. At 2:17 a.m., my phone buzzed with a ring alert while I sat in my darkened office, pretending to work on code reviews. The notification made my stomach drop. Motion detected at front door. I opened the app expecting to see a raccoon or delivery driver. Instead, Patricia Kellerman and Kevin Russo stood on my front porch, Patricia holding what looked like a master key while Kevin shifted nervously behind her with a flashlight and clipboard. "What the hell?" I whispered, thumb swiping to the live feed. Patricia inserted the key and turned it. The deadbolt clicked open. I watched in real-time horror as they entered my house, while my mother slept defensively in her bedroom and I sat 8 miles away, helpless to stop them. "Entry successful." Patricia's voice came through crystal clear on the audio feed. "Proceeding with compliance verification." Kevin's voice, barely audible. "Patricia, maybe we should just check the cameras from outside." "The inspection is comprehensive, Kevin. Document everything." They moved through my living room, Patricia's flashlight beam sweeping across family photos, my mother's medical equipment, the wheelchair accessibility modifications I'd installed after her stroke. Kevin followed reluctantly, his body language screaming discomfort. "Kitchen appears compliant," Patricia noted clinically. "Proceeding to secondary areas." My hands shook as I watched them walk down the hallway toward the bedrooms. This was insane, criminal, but I couldn't look away from the screen. They stopped at Mom's room first. Patricia tried the handle, but I'd installed a privacy lock after her stroke, so she could feel secure during her vulnerable recovery periods. "Locked room detected," Patricia said. "Potential concealment of violations." "That's Mrs. Chen's bedroom," Kevin whispered urgently. "She's sleeping. We shouldn't document the lock as a compliance obstruction." They moved past Mom's room to mine at the end of the hall. Patricia pushed open my door without hesitation, and suddenly I was watching these strangers violate the most private space in my life. My bedroom camera, a small ring unit I'd mounted discreetly in the corner for complete home security coverage, captured everything in infrared clarity. Patricia swept her flashlight across my dresser, my closet, even my unmade bed, while Kevin stood frozen in the doorway. "Bedroom surveillance confirmed," Patricia announced, pointing directly at my camera. "Multiple monitoring devices throughout residence." What she didn't know, what neither of them knew, was that my ring system was configured for maximum security. Every camera fed live to the cloud, Every recording automatically backed up to multiple servers, and every alert triggered notifications to my emergency contact list, including my brother Marcus, stationed with the Marines in Ramstein, Germany. 8,000 miles away, Staff Sergeant Marcus Chen was starting his morning PT routine when his phone exploded with ring notifications. I knew because he immediately started calling me, the overseas ringtone buzzing insistently through my office speakers. But I couldn't answer. I couldn't move. I could only watch as Patricia spent another 15 minutes systematically documenting every camera in my house, taking flash photos and detailed notes while Kevin increasingly tried to convince her to leave. "This is enough documentation," Kevin finally said, his voice strained. "We should go before—" "Before what, Kevin?" "Before we finish our job?" Patricia's tone turned dangerous. "You seem to be developing selective compliance issues yourself." The threat in her voice was unmistakable. Kevin went silent. They finally left at 2:43 a.m., but not before Patricia stopped in my living room to stare directly at the main camera and deliver what sounded like a prepared statement. "Mr. Chen, this inspection has confirmed multiple violations of community surveillance standards. You have 24 hours to achieve full compliance, or the board will implement permanent corrective measures." The front door closed. The lock clicked. Silence returned to my house. My phone was buzzing constantly now. Missed calls from Marcus, text messages from the Ring app, motion alerts from every camera as Patricia and Kevin drove away. But all I could think about was my mother, sleeping fitfully in her bedroom, completely unaware that strangers had just walked through our home while she lay vulnerable and alone. Patricia Kellerman had just committed breaking and entering, captured in high-definition video with timestamp evidence and audio recordings. She'd also just handed me exactly what I needed to destroy her. Word count: 700 part 6. I broke every speed limit racing home, my hands shaking on the steering wheel as Marcus's calls kept coming through my Bluetooth. The third time my phone rang, I finally answered. "David, what the fuck is happening at your house?" Marcus's voice crackled with fury across the overseas connection. "I just watched 2 people break into your bedroom while you were gone." "I know, I saw it too. I'm almost home." "You saw it? Where are you?" "At the office. It's a long story, Marcus, but—" "They were in your house for 26 minutes, David. I timed it. I watched that woman go through your personal belongings like she owned the place." His voice was tight with the controlled rage I remembered from our childhood, when neighborhood bullies picked on smaller kids. "Is Mom okay?" "I don't know yet. I'm pulling into the driveway now." I found Mom awake in her bedroom, sitting upright in bed with her light on and her emergency button clutched in her hand. The sound of my key in the front door made her call out in a shaky voice. "David? Is that you?" "It's me, Mom. I'm home." When I reached her doorway, the fear in her eyes broke my heart. "I heard voices," she whispered. "People walking around the house. I thought I was having nightmares from my medication, but the sounds were so real." I sat on the edge of her bed and took her hands. They were ice cold despite the warm night. "Mom, I need to tell you something, and I need you to stay calm." "What happened?" "Patricia Kellerman and Kevin Russo used master keys to enter our house while I was at work. They walked through our home for almost half an hour, going through rooms, taking pictures, documenting our security cameras." Mom's face went pale. "They were actually here? In our house? The cameras recorded everything, every step, every word, every violation of our privacy and safety." I squeezed her hands gently. "Mom, what they did was criminal. They broke into our home." "But I was here alone." Her voice cracked. "David, what if I'd gotten up to use the bathroom? What if I'd fallen and they'd found me?" The image of my vulnerable mother encountering those intruders in our hallway made my vision blur with rage. "That's not going to happen again. I promise you." My phone buzzed with another call from Marcus. This time, I put him on speaker so Mom could hear. "Marcus, you're on speaker with Mom." "Aunt Eleanor, are you okay?" Marcus's voice softened immediately. "I'm scared, Marcus. They were in our house while I slept. I heard them, but I thought—" She trailed off, overwhelmed. "Ma'am, I want you to know that what I witnessed tonight was a felony. Breaking and entering, criminal trespass, violation of privacy. That woman just committed multiple crimes against our family. Marcus's military training was evident in his clipped, controlled tone, and I recorded everything on my end. You recorded it? The Ring system automatically streams to emergency contacts during security events. I've got 26 minutes of high-definition footage showing 2 people illegally entering your home and conducting unauthorized searches of private areas. I felt something cold and determined settling in my chest. Marcus, how clear is the footage? Crystal clear. I can read the woman's name tag, see her face perfectly, hear every word she said. David, this isn't just evidence. This is a prosecutor's dream case. Mom looked up at me with something new in her eyes. Not just fear, but anger. They made me feel unsafe in my own home. I know, Mom. After everything I've been through, with the stroke, losing my independence, having to rely on you for so much. Her voice strengthened. They made me afraid in the one place I'm supposed to feel secure. My phone buzzed with text messages. Marcus was already taking action. David, I'm sending you copies of everything I recorded, but I'm also sending this footage to my unit's media specialist and our legal affairs officer. What happened tonight isn't just a local HOA dispute anymore. This is a military family being targeted and victimized. What does that mean? It means Patricia Kellerman just picked a fight with the United States Marine Corps. Marcus's voice carried a promise that made me smile grimly. And we don't lose fights. As I helped Mom back to sleep and secured every lock in the house, my phone continued buzzing with messages from Marcus. He was already building something bigger than a simple police report. He was preparing for war, and Patricia Kellerman had no idea what was about to hit her. Part 7. The next evening, I was helping Mom with her physical therapy exercises when the doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw Kevin Russo standing on our porch, his work uniform wrinkled and his hands visibly shaking. Kevin? I opened the door cautiously. What are you doing here? David, Can I come in? Please? I need to tell you something. His voice was barely above a whisper, and he kept glancing over his shoulder like he expected Patricia to materialize behind him. I led him to the kitchen and poured 2 cups of coffee, though Kevin's hands trembled so badly he could barely hold his mug. Dark circles under his eyes suggested he hadn't slept since the break-in. I never thought she'd actually do it, he blurted out before I could even sit down. When Patricia talked about compliance inspections, I figured she meant walking around the outside of houses, taking pictures, maybe checking fence heights. I never imagined... He stopped, running both hands through his hair. Jesus, David, we were in your bedroom, your actual bedroom, while your mother slept down the hall. What if she'd woken up? What if she'd seen us? She heard you. She was terrified. Kevin's face crumpled. I've got a daughter, David. Emma's 17, and she thinks her dad's a good man. How do I look her in the eye knowing I helped some lunatic break into a stroke survivor's house? I sat across from him, studying his face. The guilt was eating him alive. Kevin, why are you really here? He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small digital recorder. Because I recorded her planning it. My coffee cup stopped halfway to my lips. What? Yesterday morning, before the break-in, Patricia called me into the HOA office, and I always record our meetings now because she's been changing her stories about what she tells me to do. Kevin's voice grew stronger, like confession was giving him courage. I've got her on tape, David, planning the whole thing. He pressed play on the recorder. Patricia's voice filled my kitchen, crisp and unmistakable. Kevin, tonight we resolved the Chen situation permanently. We used the master key access for a comprehensive compliance inspection. Kevin's recorded voice uncertain. Patricia, shouldn't we give notice? The covenants require compliance, Kevin. Mr. Chen has refused reasonable accommodation. Sometimes decisive action is necessary to maintain community standards. But if he's not home, better. No interference, no arguments, no staged compliance displays. We document every violation, photograph every device, and tomorrow morning, Mr. Chen receives a comprehensive enforcement package that makes his options crystal clear. I felt my blood pressure spike. She planned this as punishment for refusing to remove the cameras. Kevin nodded miserably. It gets worse. Keep listening. Patricia's voice continued. Between you and me, Kevin, Mr. Chen needs to understand that his technical background doesn't make him special. Too many residents think they can outsmart the board with legal research and procedural challenges. Sometimes you have to remind people who's actually in charge here. A long pause, then Kevin's voice. Patricia, I'm not comfortable entering occupied residences without the owners present. Kevin, your job security depends on following board directives, not questioning them. Mr. Chen's elderly mother poses no security risk, and frankly, seeing the consequences of his defiance might encourage better compliance going forward. The recording stopped. My hands were clenched so tightly around my coffee cup, I thought it might shatter. She wanted my mother to see you, I said quietly. She wanted to terrorize an elderly stroke survivor to make a point about authority. I should have quit right then, Kevin whispered. But Emma's college applications, the health insurance, the mortgage. He looked up at me with haunted eyes. I told myself it was just property inspection, that we weren't really hurting anyone. Kevin, how long has she been doing this? He was quiet for a long moment, then reached into his other pocket and pulled out a small notebook. 6 months, maybe longer. I started keeping track after the third time she sent me into someone's house without proper notice. Third time? Mrs. Garcia on Elm Street. Patricia had me enter her house while she was at work to verify fence measurements from inside the property line. Then, Mr. Foster on Oak Lane. Patricia wanted photos of his backyard from inside his kitchen window to document storage violations. Kevin's voice grew hollow. I've been breaking into people's homes for months, David. I've been a criminal, and I told myself it was just my job. Who else knows about this? Nobody. Patricia always schedules these inspections when other board members aren't around. She calls it streamlined enforcement and says it's more efficient than formal procedures. Kevin stood up, pacing to the window and back. But last night, watching your mother's face when she realized strangers had been in her house, David, that's somebody's grandmother. That's Emma's age in 50 years. What kind of man helps terrorize someone like that? A man who's about to do the right thing, I said quietly. Kevin stopped pacing and looked at me. What do you mean? Kevin, Patricia Kellerman just committed multiple felonies, and you recorded her planning them. But more than that, you've got evidence of a pattern of criminal behavior targeting vulnerable residents. You want me to go to the police? I want you to help me make sure this never happens to anyone else's mother. Part 8. Kevin left around 9 p.m., promising to meet me at the library tomorrow with additional evidence. After checking on Mom and making sure all our doors were locked, I settled into my home office and opened a secure video call to Marcus in Germany. His face appeared on screen at 3 a.m., his time, already dressed in fatigues and sitting in what looked like a communications center. David, I've been waiting for your call. I've got news. Good news or bad news? Depends on your perspective. I showed the bedroom footage to Master Sergeant Rodriguez, our unit's media affairs specialist. She nearly put her fist through the monitor. Marcus leaned closer to the camera. David, this isn't just a local crime story anymore. Rodriguez says this has all the elements of a viral military family support story. I pulled up my cybersecurity software and began organizing files while we talked. What does that mean exactly? It means we frame this as an attack on a military family's safety and security. Marine's elderly mother terrorized by corrupt HOA official. Marine overseas, unable to protect his family, forced to watch criminals invade his childhood home. Marcus's voice carried the rhythm of someone who'd been thinking tactically. Rodriguez says stories like this explode across military social media networks within hours. How big of a network are we talking about? Every Marine base, every Army post, every Air Force installation in the world has someone who's dealt with HOA bullshit. Military families move constantly. We're HOA nightmare fodder. Marcus pulled up something on his screen. Rodriguez has contacts at Military Times, Stars and Stripes, and half a dozen military family Facebook groups with hundreds of thousands of followers. I began compiling the digital evidence, ring footage, timestamps, Kevin's audio recordings, Patricia's violation notices, the enforcement pattern analysis I'd built. My cybersecurity training kicked in as I created redundant backups and organized everything for maximum impact. Marcus, I need you to understand something. This isn't just about our family anymore. Patricia's been using master keys to break into houses for months. She's systematically targeting vulnerable residents, elderly people, single mothers, anyone who can't fight back. That makes the story even stronger, Marcus replied. Military families protecting their communities, exposing corruption, fighting for people who can't defend themselves. That's exactly the narrative that goes viral. What's our timeline? Marcus consulted something off-screen. Rodriguez says we need simultaneous deployment across multiple platforms. Military social media moves fast. If we don't coordinate the launch perfectly, the story fragments and loses impact. I pulled up local media contacts I'd researched. I've got the civilian angle covered. Channel 7's investigative reporter specializes in HOA abuse stories. The Tribune's housing reporter wrote 3 exposés on property management corruption last year, and the mayor's office has been pushing HOA reform legislation. Perfect. Military networks amplify. Civilian media legitimizes. Local politics capitalizes. Marcus smiled grimly. Patricia Kellerman's about to get a masterclass in strategic communications. There's something else, I said, uploading Kevin's recordings to our shared secure folder. Kevin Russo recorded Patricia planning the break-in. We've got her on tape calling it punishment, bragging about teaching me a lesson, specifically mentioning terrorizing Mom to make a point about authority. Marcus went silent for several seconds, studying the audio files. David, this is prosecution-level evidence. This isn't just viral content. This is criminal conspiracy. I know. Kevin's meeting me tomorrow with more documentation. He's been keeping records of every illegal entry she's ordered. How do we protect him? If Patricia realizes he's turned witness, Kevin's scared, but he's committed. He's got a teenage daughter who thinks he's a good man. That's stronger motivation than Patricia's threats. I organized the evidence packages into shareable formats. Plus, once this goes public, Patricia won't have power to retaliate against anyone. Marcus leaned back, and I could see him shifting into operational mode. Okay, here's how we execute. Tomorrow you build the complete evidence package. Video, audio, documentation, witness statements, medical records explaining Mom's camera needs. I coordinate with Rodriguez and her network contacts. When do we launch? Rodriguez says Friday afternoon is optimal for military social media. Weekend sharing patterns amplify military family content. Marcus pulled up a calendar. That gives us 2 days to build everything perfectly. What about local coordination? You handle civilian media, I handle military amplification. We launch simultaneously. Your local reporters get exclusive first access, my military networks start sharing within minutes. And by Friday evening, this story is trending nationally. I felt something cold and determined settling in my chest. This wasn't just about cameras or HOA violations anymore. This was about systematic abuse of power, criminal violation of vulnerable people's safety, and a corrupt official who thought she was untouchable. Marcus, Patricia Kellerman has no idea what's about to hit her. No, she doesn't. But David? Marcus's expression grew serious. Once we trigger this, there's no going back. This will destroy her career, probably result in criminal charges, and turn our neighborhood into a media circus. I thought about Mom's terrified face, Kevin's guilt-ridden confession, and Maria Santos working 2 jobs while fighting bogus fines. Good, I said. Some people deserve to have their worlds burned down. Marcus smiled with the same protective fury I'd felt my entire life. Then let's light the match. Part 9. The next afternoon, I arrived at Millbrook Public Library 15 minutes early and reserved the large conference room in the back corner. I'd spent the morning creating a comprehensive evidence package, video files organized by timestamp, audio recordings with transcripts, documentation of Patricia's enforcement pattern, and medical records explaining Mom's stroke recovery needs. Maria Santos arrived first, looking nervous but determined. Frank Mitchell followed, then Sarah Chen, and finally 3 other neighbors I'd contacted through the community Facebook group. Kevin slipped in last, carrying a manila folder, thick with documents. Thank you all for coming, I began, setting my laptop on the conference table. What I'm about to show you is disturbing, but it's also evidence of criminal activity that affects every family in our neighborhood. I started with the bedroom invasion footage. The room went dead silent as Patricia's voice filled the space. Entry successful. Proceeding with compliance verification. Maria covered her mouth with her hand. Frank's jaw tightened with each passing minute. Sarah leaned forward, studying Patricia's face on screen with professional intensity. This happened Tuesday night, I explained. Patricia Kellerman and Kevin Russo used master keys to enter my house while my mother and I were away. They spent 26 minutes going through our private spaces, including my bedroom. Jesus Christ, Frank muttered. That's breaking and entering. Kevin cleared his throat. It's worse than that. He opened his folder and spread documents across the table. I've been keeping records of every unauthorized entry Patricia's ordered over the past 6 months. 12 houses total, all residents who opposed her authority in some way. The documents painted a horrifying picture. Patricia had systematically used master keys to enter homes, photograph private spaces, and document violations that justified increased harassment. Every target was either elderly, single parent, or working class. She's been treating our neighborhood like her personal kingdom, Sarah said, studying the violation patterns. Medical professionals, veterans, single mothers, anyone she sees as beneath her social status. Look at this. Kevin pulled out his digital recorder. This is Patricia planning the break-in, explicitly stating she wanted to terrorize David's elderly mother as an example to other residents. We listened to Patricia's recorded voice discussing decisive action and reminding people who's in charge. The room's temperature seemed to drop with each callous word. She needs to be stopped, Maria said quietly. My kids shouldn't have to live in fear that some psychopath might break into our house because I can't afford to fight bogus fines. While we reviewed evidence, my phone buzzed with updates from Marcus. He was executing his part of the plan from Germany, coordinating with Master Sergeant Rodriguez and building the military amplification network. Marcus, military networks are locked and loaded. Rodriguez has confirmation from Military Times, Stars and Stripes, and 6 major military family Facebook groups. Marine Corps birthday is next week. Perfect timing for military family protection story. I showed the group Marcus's messages. My brother's stationed overseas, but he witnessed the break-in through our security system. He's coordinating with military media to ensure this story reaches the widest possible audience. Frank leaned back in his chair. Military involvement changes everything. Patricia's been picking on people she thought couldn't fight back. She never expected to tangle with the Marine Corps. What's our timeline? Sarah asked. Tomorrow afternoon. We launch simultaneously across multiple platforms: local news, military networks, social media, and law enforcement. I pulled up the coordination schedule. By Friday evening, this story will be trending nationally. Kevin looked nervous. What happens to me when this goes public? You become the whistleblower who exposed criminal corruption, I replied. Kevin, you're not the villain here. You're the inside witness who found his conscience and helped protect vulnerable neighbors. My daughter Emma's going to see all this, the whole school, all her friends. Maria reached across the table and squeezed Kevin's hand. Emma's going to see that her father chose to do the right thing when it mattered most. That's something to be proud of. The meeting continued for another hour as we refined the evidence packages and coordinated individual roles. Each neighbor would share their harassment stories with local reporters. Kevin would provide official witness testimony. I would serve as the technical expert explaining the security violations. As everyone prepared to leave, Frank stood up and extended his hand to me. David, your family's been through hell, but you're about to save this entire community from Patricia's tyranny. We all are, I corrected. This only works if we stand together. Kevin lingered after the others left. David, I keep thinking about what could have happened if your mother had encountered us in that hallway. If she'd fallen, had another stroke from the shock. But she didn't, Kevin, and now we're going to make sure it never happens to anyone else. By evening, Marcus confirmed the military networks were fully prepared. Tomorrow afternoon, we would unleash a coordinated assault on Patricia Kellerman's corrupt regime. She had no idea the storm was coming. Part 10. Friday afternoon, I sat in my living room with my laptop open, Mom beside me in her wheelchair. both of us staring at the screen as Marcus initiated the most coordinated social media campaign I'd ever witnessed. At exactly 3 p.m. Eastern, 9 p.m. his time in Germany, Marcus posted the bedroom invasion footage to his Facebook account with a caption that made my throat tighten. "This is what I watched from 8,000 miles away while serving my country. HOA. President Patricia Kellerman broke into my family's house while my stroke survivor mother slept alone and my brother worked late. She walked through our home, entered my childhood bedroom, and terrorized the most vulnerable person in my life. This is what we're fighting for overseas, the right of American families to feel safe in their own homes. Share if you believe no one should have to watch criminals violate their family's sanctuary while they serve their country. Show bedroom, Wamj military family, your justice." Within minutes, the notifications started exploding. "David, look at this," Mom whispered, pointing at the screen. The share count was climbing faster than I could refresh. 47 shares, 89 shares, 156 shares. Comments poured in from military families worldwide, each one angrier than the last. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "Rodriguez says this is the fastest military family story she's ever seen spread. Military Times wants an exclusive interview in 30 minutes. Simultaneously, I began releasing the evidence package to local media. Channel 7's investigative reporter, Amanda Foster, called within 10 minutes of receiving the files. "Mr. Chen, this is extraordinary. We're moving this to our lead story tonight. Can you be here for a live interview at 5 p.m.? "Absolutely." The Tribune's housing reporter was equally excited. "This is exactly the kind of HOA corruption story we've been investigating. We're publishing online within the hour and putting this on tomorrow's front page." I refreshed Marcus's Facebook post. The numbers were staggering. 892 shares, 1,247 comments, 3,400 reactions. Military accounts with tens of thousands of followers were resharing with their own furious commentary. "Marines don't abandon family. Sharing for accountability. Served 3 tours so families could be safe at home. This is disgusting. My HOA tried similar garbage. Stand with this family." My phone rang constantly. Local TV stations, radio programs, military family advocacy groups, even a producer from a national morning show. But the real breakthrough came when the hashtag started trending. Show Bedroom appeared in the top 10 Twitter trends, with thousands of people sharing their own HOA horror stories and demanding justice for our family. Drop a like if you've ever wanted to stand up against corrupt authority figures like this, and subscribe to see justice served. Mom squeezed my hand as we watched the metrics climb. "David, the whole world is seeing what she did to us. The whole world is about to see what happens when you mess with the wrong family." By 4 p.m., Patricia's name was trending alongside hashtag HOA bedroom. Someone had identified her LinkedIn profile, her real estate license information, and her previous addresses. Social media had turned into a digital investigation, with users documenting her history and sharing their own encounters with her abuse. Kevin texted me. "Patricia just called an emergency board meeting for tonight. She's panicking. 3 board members already resigned via email." Amanda Foster's news crew arrived at 4:30 to film our interview. As we set up in the living room, she showed me the story's reach on her phone. "This is the most engagement we've had on a local story in years. Your brother's military angle turned this from a neighborhood dispute into a national military family support issue. That was the strategy. Smart strategy. We're already getting calls from national outlets wanting to pick this up." During the live interview, I kept my tone calm and factual, letting the evidence speak for itself. But when Amanda asked about my mother's experience, my voice hardened. Patricia Kellerman broke into our home while my stroke survivor mother slept defensively in her bedroom. She violated the sanctuary of a woman who's already lost so much to her medical condition. She turned our safe space into a crime scene. Mom spoke briefly, her voice steady despite the cameras. "I survived a stroke. I relearned how to walk, how to use my right hand, how to feel secure in my own body. But I shouldn't have to survive criminals breaking into my home." After the interview, I sat with Mom watching the story explode across every platform. The bedroom invasion video had been viewed over 100,000 times. Marcus's military networks had amplified it to bases worldwide. Local news was running it as breaking news. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Military Times interview was perfect. They're running it as their lead story tomorrow. David, we just declared war on HOA corruption nationwide. As evening fell, I could see neighbors gathering in small groups throughout our street, pointing at our house and talking animatedly. News vans had arrived. Patricia's house 3 blocks away was dark, curtains drawn. Mom, are you ready for what comes next? Eleanor Chen, stroke survivor and terror victim, smiled with fierce determination. Honey, I'm ready to watch that woman's world burn down. Part 11. Saturday evening, the Willowbrook Community Center was packed beyond capacity. What should have been a routine emergency, HOA meeting had transformed into a public tribunal with news cameras lining the walls and angry residents filling every available seat. I estimated over 200 people crammed into a space designed for 80. Patricia Kellerman sat at the board table, looking like she'd aged 10 years and 24 hours. Dark circles under her eyes, rumpled clothing, hands trembling as she shuffled through papers. The other 2 remaining board members, Robert Hendricks and Susan Walsh, flanked her like reluctant bodyguards, both visibly uncomfortable with the media attention. Amanda Foster from Channel 7 had positioned her camera crew directly facing the board table. I could see at least 3 other news teams scattered throughout the room, plus dozens of residents recording everything on their phones. I sat in the front row with Mom, Kevin beside us, looking nervous but determined. Maria Santos, Frank Mitchell, and Sarah Chen occupied the row behind us, along with the other neighbors who'd shared their stories with reporters. Patricia called the meeting to order, with a shaky voice that barely carried over the crowd's murmur. This emergency session has been called to address recent misunderstandings regarding HOA enforcement procedures. Misunderstandings? Frank Mitchell stood up, his veteran's voice cutting through the room. Lady, you broke Part 12. 3 weeks later, I stood in our backyard flipping burgers while Marcus tossed a football with Kevin's daughter Emma and the Santos kids. The late October afternoon was perfect. Warm sun, clear skies, and the sound of genuine laughter filling our yard for the first time since Mom's stroke. David, you've outdone yourself, Frank Mitchell said, raising his beer toward the crowd of neighbors scattered across our lawn. 6 months ago, we were all afraid to speak up about Patricia's harassment. Now look at us. I glanced around the barbecue, taking in the scene. Mom sat at the patio table with Maria Santos and Sarah Chen, all 3 women animated in conversation about the new community garden proposal. Kevin manned the grill beside me, no longer the nervous, guilt-ridden man who'd confessed in my kitchen. He'd been unanimously elected as the new maintenance supervisor under our reformed HOA structure. The charges stuck? Sarah asked, joining our conversation. All of them, I confirmed. Breaking and entering, criminal trespass, conspiracy to commit burglary, and violation of privacy rights. Patricia's looking at 2 to 5 years, plus restitution to every family she illegally entered. Marcus jogged over, slightly out of breath from playing with the kids. Just got off the phone with Rodriguez back at base. Military Times wants to do a follow-up story about the HOA reform legislation our case inspired. How many states now? 14 states have introduced bills requiring HOA transparency and limiting master key access. Colorado and Nevada already passed theirs. Marcus grinned. Patricia Kellerman accidentally became the poster child for HOA reform nationwide. The viral campaign's impact had exceeded our wildest expectations. The bedroom invasion video had been viewed over 2 million times across all platforms. Yet our HOA bedroom had trended for 6 days straight, inspiring hundreds of families to share their own HOA horror stories and demand local reforms. Emma, come tell Mr. David about your college acceptance, Kevin called to his daughter. Emma bounded over with the confident smile of a teenager whose world had suddenly gotten much brighter. I got into UC Davis pre-veterinary program with a partial scholarship. The admissions counselor said my essay about moral courage and standing up for what's right really impressed them. What did you write about? My dad, How he chose to do the right thing even when it was scary, even when it might cost him his job. Emma hugged Kevin around the waist. I'm proud of him. Kevin's eyes welled up slightly. Best compliment I've ever received. Mom wheeled herself over to our group, looking healthier and more confident than she had since her stroke. The trauma of the break-in had initially set back her recovery, but our victory seemed to have restored her sense of security and purpose. David, honey, Mrs. Patterson from Channel 7 just called. They want to interview us for their year-end Community Heroes segment. We're not heroes, Mom. We're just people who refuse to be bullied. Same thing, Frank said firmly. You two turned a personal violation into community-wide reform. That's heroic in my book. As the afternoon wore on, neighbors shared updates about their lives post-Patricia. Maria's kids could draw chalk hopscotch games without fear. Frank's American flag flew proudly without harassment. Sarah parked her car in her own driveway without citations. The new HOA board, elected by overwhelming community support, had implemented transparent procedures, eliminated master key abuse, and established a resident ombudsman program. I'd been elected president unanimously, though I'd initially resisted. You have to lead, Marcus had argued during one of our video calls. You've got the technical expertise, the community trust, and the moral authority. Plus, Mom needs to see her son in charge of the organization that once terrorized her. As evening approached and neighbors began gathering their families to leave, Marcus pulled me aside near Mom's wheelchair ramp, the same spot where Patricia had first threatened us with alternative enforcement methods. You know what the best part of this whole thing is? Marcus asked. What's that? Mom feels safe again. Look at her. We watched Eleanor laughing with the Santos children, completely relaxed and engaged. After her stroke, after losing so much independence, Patricia made her afraid in her own home. Now she's hosting neighborhood barbecues and planting community gardens. She's tougher than both of us combined. Always has been. But now she knows it too. As the last neighbors headed home, I helped Mom inside while Marcus cleaned up the backyard. Our Ring cameras, still mounted exactly where Patricia had demanded their removal, captured the peaceful scene of a community celebrating together. David, Mom said as I helped her into bed, I know this started because someone violated our family's safety, but look what grew from it. Real community, lasting change, friendships that will endure long after we're gone. Pretty good outcome for a cybersecurity guy who just wanted to keep his mom safe. The best outcome. We protected not just our family, but every family in this neighborhood. If you want more stories of homeowners standing up to HOA tyranny, hit subscribe right now, share your story in the comments, and let me know where you're watching from.